Do you find you can't get enough spooky goodness? Then by Jove, you need to check out the Generally Spooky Patreon. For the princely sum of £4 a month, you can enjoy our main episodes a whole day earlier than the general public. If that doesn't float your boat, you can become an £8 a month spooky trooper. You'll get the main episodes early and access to 12 extra Patreon exclusive episodes, with more to come. The episode that really tickles my pickle is about Private Wojtek, a brown bear that served in World War II. As a top draw £12 a month Spookmaster General, you'll be on Cloud 9 with access to our Wee Blether series. In it, my darling wife and I debrief episodes, play games, and chitter-chatter about our goings-on. You'll also become a member of the Spooky Book Club, where Eilidh is currently reading us Peter Pan, having just finished Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Simply marvellous. Did I mention you also get 10% off our quality merchandise if you join? You bet your bacon you do. So come join us. Get your peepers over to patreon.com/generallyspooky and support your favourite rapscallions. Tally-ho!
Hi, I'm Marty.
And I'm Effie.
And we would love you to come and join us on our podcast, Mums, Mysteries and Murder.
Each month we take turns telling you true crime stories and mysteries from our places of birth, Australia and Scotland.
I'm covering Australia.
What's your favourite thing about Australia, Marty?
It would have to be the weather and the meat pies.
The meat pies are strong in Australia.
The meat pie game is good.
Really? Oh. I'm covering Scotland.
What's your favourite thing about Scotland?
And macaroni pies and haggis. Haggis balls.
Macaroni. Macaroni should not be in a pie.
Have you tasted one though?
No, I don't need to. It's like Mars bars.
It's amazing. If you love podcasts that are on point, heavily researched and full of gruesome details, that's probably not us.
But if you do love a bit of true crime chat, Netflix recommendations and random banter, we do talk about last meals a lot, don't we?
Yeah, but it's a good topic.
Macaroni pie for your last meal?
Yes.
Meat pie. Then come join us where you get your podcasts, and we would love it if you would subscribe so you don't miss new episodes.
Come and follow us on Instagram at Mums, Mysteries and Murder.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to the Generally Spooky podcast.
Welcome. Hello
We're back again this week. Hello. Welcome. Have a seat. You want a cup of tea?
I have a cup of coffee.
Coffee.
So
juice.
Get yourself a hot beverage.
Squash. Diluting juice.
Juice.
Juice?
Yeah, because we're in Scotland, so it's all juice.
Diluting juice. It's all juice. I have 2 juices.
There's fizzy juice, diluting juice, orange juice, like fruit juice. It's all just juice.
Juice.
JOOCE.
Well, get a beverage.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been? Are you well?
Are you ready to hear some more spooky Scottish history? Because if you're not, you should probably leave.
Yeah, this is the wrong podcast for you, especially if you don't like rambling or long-form content. You need to be on TikTok.
Yeah.
Because this is the opposite.
Like the least TikTok-friendly podcast there is.
Yeah. If you want to settle in for a good long yarn about Scottish history and weird, spooky, creepy things that have happened, you found your people.
This is the right place. This is what we do here. And we're excited to bring you a fresh new episode this week.
It's a good one this
Yeah.
week. I mean, I feel like I say that every week. But if I didn't say that, then we shouldn't do it.
Well, yeah, that would be like, oh, this one's a bit shit, but we're here anyway. I'm like, oh, okay then.
So I actually couldn't really be arsed telling you the story, but we needed to, so here we go. If I didn't think it was good, we shouldn't be here.
That's not what we do here. No. As usual, I don't know what we're talking about today. I haven't heard this story.
Nope.
Apart from maybe at school if it's come up. And Eilidh over there will be telling it to me.
Yes. I am storyteller extraordinaire. I got halfway through complimenting myself and then regretted it.
I am the storyteller, yes.
Yeah, I didn't even want to finish. Self-esteem, who is she? I don't know her. Hope you enjoyed last week's episode. A bit long. Lots of fun. Eilidh Donnan Castle.
It was a goodie.
If you haven't listened, highly recommend. Although you don't need to have listened to that one to understand what we're talking about today.
Nope.
It's fine. But it was a cracker. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of fun.
We did indeed. Oh, For those who've been following along with Season 5 so far, we have Labelle Rebelle t-shirts in the works.
Yes, we're making them.
They're not available yet, but we have made a design and we've ordered some samples.
Yes, so we're going to get them before you guys get the chance.
Yes, so we can make sure they're actually worth wearing.
And hot tip, I've decided I'm going to do a giveaway over on Instagram.
Oh my god.
With the new Labelle Rebelle merch. So if you want some and you don't want to pay for it, I understand. That's my whole life. Follow us on Instagram because I'm going to be giving some stuff away.
That's what we're going to do. I just realised when I said we have designed and we have ordered, that was awfully generous to myself.
I mean, I was going to let you have it. I'm not going to do that to you on air. Air quote, on air.
Eilidh has designed and Eilidh has ordered.
I have done this in its entirety and Kieran likes it.
Yeah, that's not true. I started.
Entirely my idea and concept and execution. All me.
I made the first draft.
It was all me. I'm taking it. No one will know.
Yeah, fair enough.
No one will believe you. It's all me, baby.
I mean, to the listener, there's very little other work I do in this podcast other than just sit here.
But yes, new merch is coming, and I really hope you're going to like it because I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
I want this stuff for myself.
So stay tuned. We will announce it on the episode or on Instagram somewhere.
Yes, we will let you know as soon as it's available. Instagram is probably the best place. If you're interested in getting a discount code, you get one when you join the Patreon.
Oh, I've heard that.
I'm just saying.
You're just throwing it out there.
Yeah, if you want to support us by buying the merch, but you don't want to pay full price, you can join the Patreon and then you get a discount.
Oh, I mean, that'd be pretty cool. It's whatever. If you want to come hang
Shameless
it.
plug, but no one's going to do it if we don't. So I'm gonna.
Or shall we roll some music and dive into today's episode?
I think so. Before we roll the music, though, I am going to say that this week's episode is pretty gnarly. Like a little gory. Or not even gory, it's not really the right word. It's
gruesome?
Just a bit gruesome. Yeah, it's a lot. If you can't handle that, I don't think this is the episode for you. Obviously, I'm not going to go into nitty-gritty detail, but just a little heads up. It gets gnarly from here, so if you choose to listen, that's on you. Kieran is the only one who doesn't have that choice.
I do not have that luxury.
He's the only one.
What are you going to do?
I'm not going to be offended if you dip out, that's fine.
Yeah. I remember when you were researching and writing this one, just you're basically coming out of the pain cave, just a bit wide-eyed. I'm like, all right, yeah, I've just been researching some things. It's kind of a lot.
I've seen some shit.
Yeah.
Roll the music. You know what the worst part about this episode is? It's super gnarly and super grim, but it's all true. It's not like folklore where it's just a really like scary story. This week we're talking about something that really happened, and it's just that bad.
Oh no.
It's just that bad.
Yeah. It probably means it's more contemporary too, because it's...
Yes.
Well, it's always less gruesome if it was a really long time ago.
This was not that long ago.
Oh no. Well, my face is like...
You're really scrunchy.
Yeah, my nose has gone up,
You're scrunchy with fear.
So...
Although it's quite gnarly, I have been excited to bring you this story. I feel like I've managed to get to stories this season that I've wanted to talk about for such a long time. It's been really nice. And it's a different kind of spooky this week. There are no ghosties in this story.
I'm out.
Cool. See you later. I can do this myself. This week, we are talking about Operation Cauldron.
That means absolutely nothing to me. There's sometimes a flicker of recognition that this is nada. But if it's an operation, I assume it's wartime.
It's 1952.
Oh, okay.
So it's just after World War II.
Post-war.
World War II ended 7 years ago. So at this time, it's still very fresh in everyone's memory.
Yes, that makes sense.
The world has been very slowly settling into a new normal after the lives of just about everyone on the planet have been rocked for years.
Yep.
In the aftermath of World War II, I don't know how much of this you know, Kieran, tensions have been rising between the United States and the Soviet Union to a point now that it's almost intolerable. Both countries are involved in the Korean War, which was like kind of a proxy war. They were at war with each other without actually being at war with each other.
Yeah, because each side supported either North or South Korea, didn't they?
So they didn't announce that they were at war with each other, but they were fighting each other and their values.
Yes.
As an ally of America, Britain has also become embroiled in the stalemate between East and West at this time. 87,000 British soldiers have been sent to South Korea.
Oh, wow.
But Britain itself at this time has also been the subject of multiple acts of espionage, some of them coming from inside the government itself. There were government workers and ministers who were found to be passing information on to the enemy.
Oh my God.
So there's a real climate of mistrust and fear at this time. And no one really knows who to trust, but no one wants to be at all-out war.
Yeah.
Having just started recovering.
There wouldn't be enough people to go to war again.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
Well.
So all of this is happening, but we're on the Isle of Lewis.
Oh. That's not where I thought we'd be already.
Off the west coast of Scotland, we're on an island a long way from Korea, the Soviet Union, or the United States. So imagine you're there. Picture it. It's very serene. It's very remote feeling. You could be a million miles away, you know?
Yep.
Lots of islanders who live there depended on the sea for their living. Lots of men who live in the island fish to provide for their families. Boats are always coming and going.
Okay, yep.
From the island. Except people who were living on the eastern side of the island noticed, so the side closest to Scotland.
Yeah.
Not Scotland, but the mainland. That sounded really stupid. It's part of Scotland, but it's the closest to the mainland. They noticed something strange in May 1952.
Okay.
A large boat called the Ben Lomond moors up not far from the shore. And it's not completely out of the ordinary. Like, this happens, boats appear and stop. But nobody knows why this one's here. And usually they do. It's the same in Ullapool. Word gets round and people know who's there and why they're here. Not long after the boat arrives, the Ben Lomond, the islanders notice some sort of pontoon about half a mile away from where they're standing on the beach in the water. It's pretty big. They can see it and they have no idea what this thing is for. Things only become more confusing and strange when men start coming ashore from the boat to warn fishermen that they weren't allowed to sail through that stretch of water anymore.
Well, that's not so good.
The Ben Lomond had sort of commandeered that bit of water off the island and fishermen weren't allowed to go there anymore.
That's ominous.
Children and their parents were also warned that they shouldn't play or swim in the water anymore.
Oh no. What are they? Well,
you look very suspicious.
I
can see the cogs going in your brain.
That's why no comment. Please continue.
Okay. Obviously, after all of these warnings and these new rules have been implemented, locals are becoming more and more suspicious of the new arrivals. They're watching strangers move around on the boat and the pontoon, which is weird in itself because usually you know everyone who's out in the water. They don't know these people. And no one can tell what it is that they're doing out there. It doesn't look like anything to do with fishing. It's nothing that they've ever seen before. So they have no idea what this boat is doing, what the pontoon is for, and who these people are. Then they started hearing really strange rumours.
That's guaranteed.
Yes, 100%. One person claims that they saw a bunch of people wearing strange suits on the boat.
Ooh.
And another swears that they saw cages being carried from the boat to the pontoon. And these cages looked like they had things moving in them.
Well, that's got much more intrigue than strange suits. Cages. Mm-hmm. They're introducing sea bears, aren't they?
Sea bears. Sea lions. Now, imagine yourself as if you are really there in 1952 with all this going on. The strangest thing is what you notice for yourself while you're just walking on the beach one day. Mm-hmm. Imagine the pebbles moving under your feet and you can hear the soft sound of the sea.
Imagine I have a similar expression to the one I have now of, what is that thing right there?
Everything is totally still and calm. The water is almost like glass, which does happen sometimes, even on the west, and it's very beautiful. Everything is still and calm, except for the large cloud of mist rolling out on the water.
That's not unusual, necessarily.
You watch as the wind catches it, and it blows this mist across the pontoon, covering it completely.
Uh-huh.
Bit weird.
But you get the holler and things.
Mm-hmm. In September 1952, so a few months later, the Ben Lomond leaves. You're not given any answers as to why it was there in the first place. They're just gone. Mm-hmm. You also don't know why the people who were working on the Ben Lomond were so furious at a fishing boat called the Corella a couple of weeks ago, just before they left. Because the Corella sailed close to the Ben Lomond by accident. They didn't observe the you can't sail here rule. You would notice that the Ben Lomond set off all kinds of sirens and red flags trying to get the fishing boat to leave, and it didn't. But as far as you could see, they weren't doing any harm. They were just sailing the stretch of water by the island.
Yep. Just fishing, probably.
Yeah. So all of that's a bit weird. It's gone now. It's finished. You haven't been told what was going on, so you kind of put it out of your mind. Mm. Cut to 1985.
Oh, that's a jump.
33 years after the Ben Lomond was moored on the outskirts of Lewis. Imagine you still live on the island, but you're older now, and you have a family of your own. Because a lot of time has passed.
Well, yeah.
You buy yourself a copy of the Observer newspaper in July 1985.
Yep.
And you notice a really striking headline. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, please.
British germ bomb sprayed trawler.
Oh, that's not good.
So, obviously you're intrigued.
Yep.
Because you seem to remember something that sounded similar to that happening about 30 years ago. So you open up the paper, and here's what it says. The crew of a British trawler was accidentally doused with plague germs during abortive Anglo-American attempts to develop a biological bomb in highly secret experiments which have never been made public.
Oh my God.
The spectre of mass deaths and a major scandal were averted in the summer of 1952 only because of the ineffectiveness of Operation Cauldron, the code name for the experiments carried out by the Royal Navy.
Oh.
A 4,000-ton tank landing ship, the Ben Lomond, was converted into a floating laboratory and moored off Cellar Head on the Hebridean island of Lewis from June until mid-September 1952. Cages of monkeys were sprayed with bacilli on a pontoon moored offshore. Just as spraying began in one of the final experiments, Navy officers were horrified to see the 400-ton Fleetwood trawler Corella rounding a nearby island, ignoring the notified safety zone. Bound for Iceland, she steamed straight into the path of the cloud of plague bacilli. Bacilli? Pneumonic plague takes about 6 days to incubate, but then kills within 3 or 4 days.
Oh no. Full-on plague. Ugh. Oh. From your own side too. It's not even like it was a Russian ship in trying it.
Nope.
Or a Soviet Union ship, sorry.
Nope.
Oh my God.
So, what on earth happened? What is this?
What is... Eilidh, what is going on?
So, I used a little bit of artistic license there to kind of set the scene. I've done it before and you guys seem to enjoy it. But that is largely what happened. And the newspaper article that I just read you is genuine. That was what was printed in the Observer in 1985.
Oh my days.
So I trimmed bits out, but that is what was actually printed. The bit before I kind of made up.
Spiced up a little bit.
Yes. The story of Operation Cauldron is insane. And I don't know how many people know that it even happened. Even people living here. I mean, you grew up in Liverpool.
Yep, that's very, well, as far as Scotland goes, that's pretty close by.
Mm-hmm. And this was just off Lewis.
Oh. That is mental.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely mental. It's weird to think of just such animal cruelty just casually taking place.
Yep. But I'm going to try to explain why this happened and what actually happened.
Please. Please do.
I'm going to try and get rid of that little wrinkle between your eyebrows.
Oh.
And give you some more answers. So you don't get cramp.
I'm going to get a frown tan line.
So long before 1952, different countries had been developing and working on biological and chemical weapons, which I think most people know. In 1915, German forces used chlorine gas in Belgium, which marked the first time that something like that was done, and the effects were horrific.
Yeah.
You've probably heard of the use of gas in World War I. It's something that gets taught about a lot.
Yeah.
So you probably know the kind of injuries that it causes, but if you don't, it's things like severe burns, damage to the lungs and eyes, and death for many exposed to it, even when the battle was over, due to the injuries that it caused.
Yeah.
And the release of this gas changed the way that many approached warfare from then on. And Britain was just one of the countries that was now involved in an arms race in order to have the biggest supply of chemical weapons, or at least the most dangerous of them. Because if you have the most, then it's that thing where it's a deterrent, because they're not going to use chemical weapons against us because we have more and they're worse.
That's why there's thousands of nuclear weapons out there.
Precisely. This is a very similar principle,
Yeah.
but this was before nuclear weapons.
Oh.
During World War I, 124,000 tons of chemical weapons were produced.
Oh.
And 1 grenade out of 3 was filled with dangerous chemical agents.
Ooh. Didn't know that.
Nope. And around 1.3 million casualties of the conflict were attributed to the use of gas.
Oh.
Horrifying.
Horrifying.
When World War I ended, because it had been so horrifying and the effects were so terrible, many felt that steps needed to be taken to stop things like gas attacks from ever happening again.
Yep.
Because the effects were too horrendous. And I think we can agree that objectively that's the best idea.
Yeah, that sounds like a smart plan, doesn't it?
So the Treaty of Versailles included terms like Germany can't have or make chemical weapons anymore. And the Treaty of Versailles was the sort of peace agreement and the truce that was agreed to stop the war.
Yeah.
But the Treaty of Versailles didn't say anything about Britain or the Allies continuing to use and make chemical weapons.
Oh, well, that was on purpose, wasn't it?
Yes.
Ugh.
The Treaty of Versailles and the terms in it is one of the contributing factors to World War II.
Oh.
Because Germany were punished extremely harshly for the war, which led to the economic climate that they were in, which was the perfect breeding ground for someone like Hitler to come in and be like, this is shit.
It was the melting pot kind of thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
Kind of. And a lot of the terms were unfair. Things like this, it's not everybody.
Yeah.
It's just Germany. Anyway, in 1925, the League of Nations came together to sign something called the Geneva Protocol.
Oh.
And here is one of the terms of that protocol. It says, it prohibits the use of asphyxiating, poisonous or other gases and of all analogous liquids, materials or devices, and bacteriological methods of warfare. This is now understood to be a general prohibition on chemical weapons and biological weapons, but has nothing to say about production, storage or transfer. Later treaties did cover these aspects.
Oh, interesting.
So you can make them, and you can develop them, and you can have them, but you can't use them.
That's always just a bit weird, isn't it? You can see why they amended it.
Yeah.
Because that's not good.
No. And even with this new treaty, even though it would potentially protect so many people, lots of the member countries of the League of Nations wouldn't sign it. They had conditions that had to be met before they agreed to sign.
Was every country's condition like, yeah, except us, though? Oh, yeah,
Well,
we agreed to all of those, apart from us.
One of them was, the way I understand it, was that certain countries would only sign if it was understood that if chemical weapons were used against them, they would automatically be allowed to retaliate with chemical weapons. The terms of the Geneva Protocol wouldn't apply anymore.
Yeah. Well, then that just kind of moots the point, doesn't it?
It's okay, but we can have them because if they use them first, then we're allowed to do that.
Yeah. I go, well, then everyone just has them, don't they?
Even though it's still horrifying.
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy. It wasn't as easy as just everyone coming together and saying, no, we're not going to do this anymore.
You think it would be, but it never is.
No. When it was examined much later in 2005, the Geneva Protocol, more flaws were found in it. And like using chemical weapons against countries not included in the protocol was fine.
Oh. Well. You...
And if a country that signed the protocol ended up in a civil war, they could use chemical weapons within their own borders.
No.
That was totally legal and allowed.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And you were allowed to stockpile chemical weapons. There was nothing in any treaty that stopped that.
How? I mean, it's easy with hindsight, isn't it, to find the holes after you've looked at it for a long time. But how did they miss these things?
I feel like those were there entirely on purpose. They weren't missed.
No.
Not at all. It's too big a document for something like that to just be missed.
Yeah.
So this is very deliberate.
Oh, God. Well, the wrinkles in my forehead's not gone yet.
No. What I'm trying to get at with all of this is that there are big, big problems.
Yes. Because all of this is just fine. So then that means that testing off of Lewis wasn't illegal.
No.
Ill-advised, perhaps, but just totally fine at the time. Well, shit.
Mm-hmm. So when World War II came around, so the League of Nations, it was 1925, and World War II broke out in 1939, even though lots of countries had stockpiles of chemical weapons, because they'd had some time to develop them and work on them, they were rarely used during the Second World War, because everyone was afraid of the consequences.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to the nuclear deterrent that gets bandied about.
Yeah.
It's a similar thought process, I think. We don't want to risk using them because the risk to us is too great.
Yes. I didn't think they were so present. Mm-hmm. Like, I knew they weren't used that much, but I didn't realise that they could have been. You know, that just one like bad judgment call where one person starts and then everyone piles on.
They existed big time in huge numbers.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you just can't go outside in all of Europe. Not good.
Thankfully in World War II they weren't really used. Mm-hmm. The Cold War came after World War II, which I talked about a little at the beginning. This wasn't so much outright war, like I said, but tensions were really high between the Soviet Union, who were part of the winning side in World War II, which is important for this, because this allowed them to extend their influence through parts of Eastern Europe and spreading their communist ideology, because that's what they were about.
Yep.
And when it suited them, Britain and the US were fine with that, because they were on the same side.
Yep.
But now the United States are threatened by the spread of communism, and they didn't want the Soviet Union dominating in Europe. So that's why the Cold War became a thing.
Yes.
And Britain had been allies with both parties in the war, like I said, but didn't support communism. And in 1946, Winston Churchill gave a speech where he referred to the Iron Curtain falling across the East.
I was vaguely aware of some of this, because it's like a little bit before our time, but I've come across it, I knew roughly. Because that happened, like Poland got really shafted by that, didn't they?
Yes, we talked about that in our extra episode on Patreon about Wojtek the Bear.
Yes.
That was why Wojtek the Bear never went back to Poland.
Yeah. Which I think someone in that weird radio ad at the start of the episode mentions.
I know, he sounds super keen on that episode.
Yeah.
Guy's a weirdo.
Weird.
Britain tried to participate in holding back the spread of the Soviet Union in other countries, but because they had just fought in a world war, they didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
To basically be in another war.
No. Or a lot of men.
No, but America had a plan for this, called the Marshall Plan.
Okay.
In 1948, they gave Britain $2.7 billion and more money to other countries to help with their economic recovery, but also to allow them to help keep the Soviets at bay.
Yeah.
So America is now directly meddling.
No strings attached. 2.8 billion.
Yeah. British soldiers, like I said, were sent to South Korea in the early 50s to fight in the Korean War as part of this proxy war. And it was in this climate that the US and the UK built their special relationship politically, because both were very worried about Soviet power expanding.
Yep.
They needed to be ready and ideally needed to have the upper hand in defence, which led to weapon development.
Ugh.
This was a very roundabout way of getting here. Apologies, but...
You need the context.
Yeah, because all of this had happened and it kind of makes sense why they're so scared. Mm-hmm. You know?
Well, you can see why they did it. Because I don't have the answers of what they could have or should have done better. I have no idea. But you can see why they didn't do nothing.
Well, the context explains why the British government would agree to do something that crazy as Operation Cauldron.
Yeah. Like developing weaponized plague.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good.
So, to try and combat the Soviets, British, American and Canadian governments all came together to perform experiments to test the viabilities of different biological weapons. And when I talk about biological weapon, I mean a weapon that could be deployed to infect the enemy with a disease, an illness, a bacteria.
Yep.
There were several series of this style of experiment. Operation Cauldron and Operation Hesperus were a couple of these. And some of these tests happened near Flannan Isle.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's pretty remote, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That would make sense.
Still on the west.
Yep.
But we're focusing mainly on Operation Cauldron this episode, because it's easier.
Well, let's just deal with one horror at a time, shall we?
Right. So, do you want to hear what their plan was, how they expected it all to go?
I mean, I almost don't, but...
I don't even blame you. I don't even blame you.
That's fine. Should we just a wee 30-minute episode today? And I'll just get a wee hot water bottle and climb into bed for a bit.
Okay, guys, that's it from us, because Kieran has to go throw up.
Yes, please enlighten me.
Okay. For Operation Cauldron, they effectively turned the Ben Lomond, which was the big boat, into a big lab, like I mentioned earlier. The Royal Navy worked with Porton Down, which was a military research site down in England, to test the effects and the efficacy of releasing biological agents on test subjects. They wanted to find out whether it would be possible to weaponize the plague.
Well, it would be pretty disastrous if they did.
And they were thorough because they were checking pneumonic and bubonic plague.
Oh, yes.
So different strains.
Which we talked about in Mary King's Close, I think.
We did.
How did they think that if they dropped the plague in another country, it wouldn't make it back to their own country?
Well, it kind of depends on what they're aiming for.
Yeah.
Because they were testing the severity of the infection. So if it just weakens a population but doesn't kill, that's very different
That's
to if
true.
it kills very quickly and it's not going to spread because everybody's already dead.
Yeah, I guess so.
And that's what they were testing.
But with, COVID being the prime example of how things can spread. Like, haha, we've got you with this. And then it's 2 months later, like, oh, now all our troops are over there are also sick.
Well, if I remember rightly, I do have some examples.
Okay.
But I'll get there. Yersinia pestis is the bacteria that causes both of these types of plague, And we talked a lot about the plague in our Mary King's Close episode, so I'm not going to get too in-depth here.
Maybe your Cinia is pestis, but mine certainly isn't.
Someone's feeling better. Cracking joke.
It's cutting through that tension.
If it's pneumonic plague, then the bacteria attacks your lungs. If it's bubonic, it attacks your lymph nodes. Symptoms for both illnesses include fever, headaches, chest pains and shortness of breath, coughing, vomiting and swollen lymph nodes. Now, pneumonic was the more deadly type of plague to get. You were more likely to die if you caught pneumonic plague because there was no treatment available. And typically you would catch the plague from infected animals, since historically it was spread by fleas.
Yes.
Not by bombs.
Not by bombs.
No.
Ooh.
Now, sorry.
Presumably it's pneumonic as in pneumonia.
Yes. Yes.
And then bubonic as in pneumonia.
Yes.
Yeah. Got
That's
it.
the scientific term. I'm a scientist.
Yep. And I'm a doctor, so.
Good, I'm glad we got that straightened out. Now, although we focused on it a lot in our Mary King's Close episode, talking about the plague in the 1600s, maybe earlier. That's bad, I don't have that off the top of my head. But, we were talking about the plague historically. There were 783 cases of pneumonic plague reported globally in 2013.
Really? Wow.
And since 2002, there have been 7 plague outbreaks.
Ooh. I do remember there was one that happened in the first year of COVID. A couple of people, possibly in Russia, got bubonic plague off like a badger or something. Or, I don't know, they caught plague off of something.
Yeah, I can't confirm that, I don't know.
Can't remember, but there was a headline like, oh, and now we have the plague, basically.
Well, the plague never left.
Yeah. Ooh. Well.
So the British, American and Canadian governments are coming together to try to weaponise these bacteria. And this isn't even the first time that it was attempted. Way back in 1343 in Russia, so 700 years ago,
Okay.
an army attacked a city, and this is a bit gnarly, but they catapulted the bodies of infected plague victims over the city walls to infect everyone inside so they could take the city.
I knew that. I'd come across that. Must be a horrible history or something.
Probably. 1343 they were doing that. But it had even been attempted as recently as 1940.
Oh, no.
So-
During World War II,
Well,
presumably?
listen to this.
Okay.
Quote, plague was used during the Second Sino-Japanese War as a bacteriological weapon by the Imperial Japanese Army. These weapons were provided by Shiro Ishii's units and used in experiments on humans before being used in the field.
Ew.
For example, in 1940, the Imperial Japanese Army Air Service bombed Ningbo with fleas carrying the bubonic plague. During the Gabarovsk war crime trials, I might be saying that wrong, the accused, such as Major General Kiyoshi Kawashima, testified that in 1941, 40 members of Unit 731 airdropped plague-contaminated fleas on Changdi. These operations caused epidemic plague outbreaks.
Jesus.
Unquote.
Where's Chandy?
I don't know. Let me check.
I don't know where the Sino-Japanese War was.
China.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Well, that's chill.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Awesome. Isn't it so fun having a podcast?
It's fun talking about biological warfare. Operation Hesperus was one of the other sets of experiments that was carried out, which I mentioned earlier, and they were testing out the viability of other diseases. The first was brucellosis.
Is that to do with broccoli?
Brucellosis, which is sometimes known as Malta or Mediterranean fever.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Although I read in one place that they may have been testing this disease as part of Operation Cauldron. It's a bit confusing. But having brucellosis meant lots of night sweats,
Ooh.
day sweats, lots of aches and pains, And you would usually catch it by drinking unpasteurized milk.
Unpasteurized milk?
Or eating uncooked meat that came from an animal that had it.
Well, there you go. I always get night sweats. Have I just always had that?
I doubt it.
Oh my god.
When were you drinking unpasteurized milk? When do you just drink milk? No one drinks milk.
Pass.
The second disease that they were, testing out, sussing out if it fits, was tularemia, which is sometimes called rabbit fever. And this would lead to fever, skin ulcers, enlarged lymph nodes,
not good,
pneumonia, or throat infection.
Yeast.
And this one you would usually catch from ticks or infected animals.
Ooh. Ticks freak me out.
Yep. So there's another reason to hate them.
Yep. I had a tick in the back of my head the first summer we moved here.
Yeah.
Don't know how I got this. I had long hair, just like in the back of my skull.
Yeah.
Gross.
It was bad.
Absolutely gross.
Really, really bad.
Blech.
It's bad when the dog gets them. Because usually we have like a tick collar for him, so he doesn't get them as often.
No, but then again, one's determined.
Yeah. And well, because he has long hair.
Yeah.
That makes it easier for them to latch on. But the tick collar's great.
Yes.
It does the job.
Anyway.
To carry out the experiments for Operation Cauldron, Ben Lomond, the boat, was moored off Lewis, and a pontoon was built specifically for these tests. And the pontoon was where the experiments were carried out.
See, that's really cool if they were experimenting anything else.
Yeah.
Like a big floating laboratory that can just set up shop, do like a pop-up lab in the middle of the ocean. Well, it's not in the middle of the ocean.
But you
it's
know
off
what's
the coast,
awful? Was for these experiments, they were like, these need to be done out in the open so that we can protect the scientists and the soldiers.
Yeah.
But it's in the open air.
Yeah, it's like, if it blows inland or onto the island, that doesn't matter,
Like, I get trying to protect your staff, but surely you can see the bigger picture here too.
Oh, horrendous.
But it wasn't humans that they were testing the effects of these diseases on.
Well, that's good at least.
It was monkeys and guinea pigs.
Oh.
And I am sorry if that's upsetting. It's upsetting to me, but it's the truth. That's what they did.
It's a weird thing. I know the phrase, I'll be the guinea pig, if you're like trying something out. But I've never put together that, it would have been because that's what guinea pigs were used for. Grim.
Yep.
I wonder where they got the monkeys from.
I don't know where they got them from. They had them in bulk. I know that much.
Oh.
So the caged animals would be taken out onto the pontoon and left there in the cages, which some people saw from shore but couldn't make heads or tails of. And then all of the people involved in the tests would return to the Ben Lomond, the boat. The plague bacteria was released in the form of poisonous gas that was dispersed over the animal test subjects. And I read that this was done, quote, either from a bomb suspended from a boom or a spray, unquote.
I imagine it kind of like a smoke machine, like a...
Kind of, yeah.
At a disco.
I think it was quite a heavy mist.
Yeah.
When it was in the spray form anyway.
That's what I picture in my head.
Yeah. When it was safe for the humans and the animals had been exposed to the plague, they were all taken back onto the Ben Lomond to be studied. So they were looking at the effects.
Yeah.
And if any of the animals were killed as part of these experiments, which happened a lot...
Well, that's kind of the goal.
They were dissected and studied to see exactly what had led to their death.
Yeah.
So when you were saying earlier, worrying about the effectiveness of using something like this... This is what they were looking for. They were trying to see exactly what happened to the animal to suss out what the effects would be dropping that on an enemy force.
Yeah. Grim.
What's worse, portions of these tests were filmed at the time as part of the process of experimenting.
Did you see them, the films?
Well, we're going to come back to that because the film was going to prove very, very important.
Oh, no.
So these were the tests and the activity that people were watching from shore on Lewis.
Oh, crazy.
And they had no idea. Everything was super classified and no one said anything to the locals living there. They were not informed. There was no consent, no nothing.
Mental. Going back a bit, the fishing boat that went past, that got plagued, did they catch the plague?
Oh, I'm going to tell you about that in a bit.
Okay.
Don't you worry, babe.
I'm jumping ahead.
I got you.
So many questions.
Right.
Further question. Does any of this have anything to do with Anthrax Island?
No, but we are going to talk about that.
Does that come up as well? Okay.
I knew you'd ask me about that. I knew.
It's very relevant.
That is an episode to itself.
I thought
that
so.
That is a different thing.
Okay.
But I know why you're thinking that.
Yeah.
And I will explain to you listening what Kieran means at the end.
At the end, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
From what I read at the time, there were some local dignitaries, in quotes, from the Isle of Lewis who visited the Ben Lomond at one point. But I think because it was all classified, either they weren't told the truth or they couldn't talk about it when they came home.
Yeah. Well, you could go onto the boat and just like go into the part where you steer and things and just have a chat and things and go off again. Like, yeah, we're fishing.
Is that the wheelhouse?
Oh, yeah, the wheelhouse.
Is it still the wheelhouse on a boat that big?
I don't know, actually. Not sure. But
I'm not a boat person.
you're not a boater.
I'm not. I'm just not. I like land.
Yeah. I feel you could easily be fooled.
Well, I mean, you could be taken onto the boat and said, oh, we're running experiments.
Mm-hmm.
It's classified. That's all you would get.
Yeah, like, oh, cool.
So it's not clear how much they actually knew, if anything.
Yeah.
Over the course of Operation Cauldron, quote, no less than 3,492 guinea pigs and 83 monkeys, unquote, were tested on.
That's a lot.
A huge number, considering they were there for a few months.
Yeah. I'm surprised more of the crew didn't catch anthrax. Sorry.
You're getting confused.
I'm confusing myself. Catch the plague.
No, on the whole, the tests were considered, quote, successful. The results they were seeing were promising, and the crew and everyone involved were safe. They had run the tests in a way that they weren't impacted. Or certainly from what I read.
Well,
you know.
Well, that's good, I guess. I struggle to find any good in any of this.
Well, shit really hit the fan. When the final experiment was being run for Operation Cauldron. This is when shit really hit the fan.
Oh, no.
The Corella was a fishing boat from Lancashire. And although I read differing accounts, including the article I read to you from in the beginning, it seems like they were coming home after fishing in and around Iceland.
Okay.
Not heading out, like the newspaper had said. And that's why they were sailing around Lewis. They were coming home.
Mm.
They hadn't been staying on the island, so they weren't familiar with the recommendations and the suggestions that the locals had been given about not getting too close to the Ben Lomond.
Yeah.
Because they were coming in.
You're just passing through.
The Corella started approaching the Ben Lomond, ready to sail past it, which would have been completely ordinary and no big deal. But on this occasion, the Corella got closer and closer to the Ben Lomond, while lots of the crew on the Ben Lomond were literally shaking big red flags and sounding lots of alarms, trying to get them to turn, to leave, trying to show them that you can't be here.
Yeah.
But the Corella sailed straight through one of the experiments, not thinking anything of it. They sailed straight through a whole big cloud of the plague.
Oh, no.
Which is like something out of a horror movie.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God.
So what do you do if you're in the position of the government and the military?
Ooh. I don't even want to be, really. I don't even want to pretend. I am not doing anything.
Glad that's not me.
Yeah, I am not taking any opinion. They probably deny it. They just hardcore deny that anything happened.
Well, naturally, they were really worried that this incident was going to lead to a plague outbreak when Corella got back to its home port.
Yeah, you would.
But they didn't force the Corella to stop. And they didn't force the Corella to quarantine.
They just let it happen. It's pure denial. Oh, they must have got the plague off eating some bad fish.
Well, they decided it wasn't worth compromising the nature of the experiments because everything was highly classified. This could not get out. They didn't think it was worth compromising the security of the experiments on the off chance that the crew of the Corella actually became infected. They decided it wasn't worth it.
It's not good. You know, it's not good.
So what they did do was have the fishing boat followed, and the crew of the Corella covertly watched. And in the Observer article from 1985, it said, a destroyer was dispatched from the Clyde 400 miles south with a supply of vaccine and ordered to stay over the horizon tuned to the Corella's frequency. If it picked up distress calls, the Navy was to steam up and board the trawler. The destroyer's doctor would be given the serum and told the reason for its use.
Oh.
A Department of Health emergency officer was also sent to the trawler's home port, Fleetwood.
Oh my god. Oh yeah, we'll help them if they start dying. Otherwise, they're on their own.
Yeah, if they become ill, we will intervene. But remember, at this point, they haven't even told these men what they've been exposed to.
Oh, it's so bad. So bad.
And a vaccine does exist for the pneumonic plague. I read on the American CDC website, but it's not widely available. But it does exist.
Well, there you go. I didn't know that.
So they basically did nothing. They didn't tell the 18 fishermen on board what they had sailed through and what the risks were.
It's a big boat.
They had no idea.
Oh. Oh.
Isn't it awful?
That's just awful.
From what I saw, they didn't have any idea about any of it until some of them were approached by the BBC for a documentary around 2000.
Oh.
Some of them had died and had never known what happened to them.
Well, yeah. 50 years after the fact?
They never knew.
That's awful. That's absolutely awful.
So the Corella was allowed to continue its journey with no intervention to disinfect it or check to see if the men were healthy. They were allowed to go on leave in Blackpool, potentially infected with the plague. But luckily, none of them had it.
Ooh.
They stayed healthy. They were extremely lucky.
Yeah. Oh my god. That's insane. It's a really weird image being tailed by a destroyer.
Yeah, but over the horizon.
I know, just like, oh, can you like surreptitiously follow them? But is anything subtle about a destroyer?
But that's how serious it was, that it was a destroyer that was used.
Oh my god.
Now this was a major cock-up. This was massive. The steps that were taken to then cover up what happened were mental.
I'm surprised the crew weren't assassinated. Levels of taken care of, you know?
We're talking the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the First Sea Lord stepping in to deal with it.
I didn't know there was a Sea Lord.
Well, they're some of the highest positions of power in the country. You don't really get higher than that.
Yeah.
I think First Sea Lord is sort of like top admiral kind of thing. I don't really know, but super duper high up in the rankings. Lots of documents relating to Operation Cauldron were destroyed on orders from above because of this accident. No one was supposed to know that any of it had ever happened. We shouldn't be having this conversation.
Yep.
And people really wanted to squash it down because of the fact that civilians had come close to becoming extremely ill.
Well, if your own country's military gives its people the plague, that's kind of a big deal.
Because the optics of it are bad enough that they're doing these tests on like home soil. I know it's on water, but you know,
I know what you mean.
they're being tested within range of people living there.
Yeah,
that's bad enough, but it went wrong.
Oh,
so we were never supposed to know about this. We shouldn't be doing this podcast.
Are we going to be on a list now? Should we be worried?
It's okay, I have a VPN. It's fine.
Should be fine, okay. Sorry, government.
I'm not apologising for shit. So this was in 1952 that all this happened.
Yes.
Lots of cover-up from the highest positions of government. This was never supposed to see the light of day.
Yeah.
Everything was quiet until that 1985 article that I read to you from was released.
So who leaked it to them? Presumably that's where this video comes in.
Well, at the time, it was informed by an anonymous source from within the British government. This anonymous person had gone to the Observer with information that they'd managed to get from one of the only surviving files from Operation Cauldron.
Whoa.
They found it, and it's one of the only pieces of evidence that still existed.
Oh my, that's mental. Mental.
Now, a lot more than what I read you at the start was revealed by this anonymous informant. Mm-hmm. They claimed that local MPs from Lewis had tried to ask questions about what was going on because they weren't happy about it. All of this was very secretive and happening on their doorstep, and they weren't informed. But they were either fobbed off with things like, the public are at no risk, don't worry, or told absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So they tried to pursue answers and they couldn't get them.
Oh, God.
In fact, Donald Stewart, who was the MP for the Western Isles at the time, went as far as to pursue Francis Pym, who was the Defence Secretary. So again, that's a high position within UK, like British government. Mm-hmm. He went to the Defence Secretary trying to get answers about what had happened as late as 1979.
Oh.
He was pursuing him hard because of the rumours that were circulating about why the Ben Lomond was there.
Yeah.
He was demanding answers.
Well, I think even the wildest rumours, there's a possibility that they weren't as wild as the truth.
Yeah, 100%. But even when Donald Stewart met with Francis Pym, the Defence Secretary, he couldn't tell him anything. It seemed like the Defence Secretary knew as little as the local MP.
Wow.
He didn't have any answers to tell him because he didn't know.
Well, if they buried it that deep, maybe it was just an oversight that this one file existed at all.
How scary is that?
Well, because it makes you wonder, what else? You know? God, this is how you end up as a conspiracy theorist, isn't it?
Except this happened.
Exactly.
This is all the truth. It's all 100% true. I'm not a conspiracy theorist sharer by any means.
Nope.
I think you get into some hot water doing stuff like that if you can't verify. But this is all genuine. I haven't been able to find much about what the public thought about this article. There's not a lot of discourse and comment because it's the 80s, so you can't just read the comments.
Yeah, there's no like forums about it, is there?
But you have to imagine that it was horror that this had happened.
Probably a lot of disbelief as well. Just a lot of it. Bullshit. No way. I remember that thing. It was just a big fishing boat. What are they talking about? Crazy.
Callum MacDonald, who was another Western Isles MP, went to the Secretary of Defence in 1994, demanding an independent report looking into Operation Cauldron and Operation Hesperus, since they were both in that area.
Fair play.
Although they were different operations.
It's a good year. It's a good year.
A fair call. Totally valid. So he posed a question to the Ministry of Defence in the House of Commons, because he's an MP, so that's his space to do that. He asked the question in the House of Commons, which was then passed on to the Director General at Porton Down, which was the research facility that I talked about.
Yes.
They were helping with Operation Cauldron. And I read the letter that was sent to Callum MacDonald in reply, and it was awful.
What was it? Either just like, don't even go there, or just, no, nothing, don't even worry about it?
Well, I have a couple of parts that I can read to you.
Please do.
The letter is in the public domain. Because it was asked in the House of Commons, they had to reply publicly.
Yeah.
Here's some things that it said. The papers on Operations Cauldron and Hesperus are classified, and it would not be in the national interest to make these available, as the information therein could be misused by states seeking to acquire a biological weapons capability. The safety aspects of handling, transport, and packaging were all carefully addressed to ensure there was no danger to any of those engaged in the trial.
Oh.
There is no cause to believe that there was any hazard to the public or the environment, and there is no evidence to the contrary.
Well, that's not what you want to hear, is it?
Because it's not true.
Yeah. That's not good. That's some grade A level bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Not good enough.
No, not good enough at all.
So Callum MacDonald replied to this letter publicly, saying, "This reply is deeply unsatisfactory and does not provide any of the reassurances which I and my constituents seek about the tests."
Yeah.
Because they haven't. They've completely fobbed them off.
Well, it's just no, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
We checked and we decided that there was no danger.
God.
But it was like the whole COVID scandal with like Boris and everybody. Mm-hmm. Well, we've looked into it. We've carried out an inquiry and we've decided that we didn't do anything wrong.
That's just what was in my head.
Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they refused to do an independent inquiry.
Yeah. Oh, it's disgusting. So does one get done? Has one been done since?
We'll get there.
Okay.
In an article that I read for this episode, I also read that, quote, he continued to outline his belief that it was not this is Callum MacDonald. He continued to outline his belief that it was not satisfactory that the same government organisation which carried out potentially highly dangerous experiments should be allowed to pass the final judgment on itself regarding the health implications, both then and subsequently.
Yeah, good guy. That is 100% correct.
So he was very vocal about just how unacceptable the way they handled it was.
Yeah. And
that they weren't getting any answers at all. He makes a good point, I think.
I think so. That's why independent bodies should exist.
Mm-hmm. And I should also say, at the time of the experiments, all of it was signed off and approved by the then Scottish Secretary.
Ah.
He agreed to everything.
Oh, okay.
So there's no Scottish Parliament back then.
No.
So there used to just be a Scottish Secretary in the British government.
Got you.
Everything was run past him and he agreed to the test being done.
Ah, so he had the final say as to whether they could do it in Scotland.
Yeah.
Got you.
And he agreed.
What an arsehole.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he was even from Scotland.
I'm not sure. I would need to look into it again. But yeah, he said it was all fine. No problem. Do your tests in the Hebrides, that's fine.
Gross.
Things got worse for the people who carried out Operation Cauldron.
Good.
When, in 2008, I know, so recent. In 2008, the Ministry of Defence were forced to release a film showing the experiments.
Oh, God. That's not good.
A Freedom of Information request had been submitted for a film by Mike Kenner, who was researching the event. Mm-hmm. He submitted the request and they had to follow suit.
I was wondering about that, because I knew you could do that, the Freedom of Information request, but I wasn't sure when that came into effect and what power the people that being submitted to could just say no.
Well, the Ministry of Defence fought releasing this film at every step, claiming that because you could see people's faces in it, it might put people at risk. Although it was being released in 2008, 50 years after the experiments were done.
Yeah.
And their further argument was that the process of blurring everyone's faces would be too expensive.
Oh.
And there's a limit on how much someone is required to spend to release something under the Freedom of Information Act.
Oh. Well, that's some paper-thin arguments right there.
So they were saying it's too expensive. We're not paying that.
Oh, it'd be so difficult downloading the file, emailing the file to you. It's way too much hassle. We can't do that. But
it's grotty.
But he succeeds?
Well, a body called the Information Commissioner's Office ruled against the Ministry of Defence's arguments. And they disagreed with them so hard that they threw out everything that the MOD had tried to claim.
Wow.
And then forced them to release the full film. So this, the Information Commissioner's Office obviously disagreed with their arguments so heavily that they came down on them hard. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they had to release the full film, and it's incredibly damning.
Yeah.
I would not recommend watching this film.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
Oh, God.
I did I needed to know for the episode. Wouldn't recommend it. I am not linking it anywhere. It's hugely upsetting, especially if you're sensitive, and especially if the thought of animal testing upsets you.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's what's in the film.
I will not be watching that film.
No, and neither you should. If I didn't need to know what was in it for this episode, I would not have watched it.
That's horrendous.
Yep. The whole film is 47 minutes long.
Is it 47 continuous minutes, or have they like clipped together like a whole experiment?
From what I remember, they've clipped things together.
Yeah.
But I really don't want to.
We don't have to.
I don't want to talk about it.
We don't have to talk about it. You don't have to think about it. We just.
But that was really the nail in the coffin for Operation Cauldron, because they do not come out of this looking good.
No.
And it goes against all the statements and everything that they tried to say before, because you can see what they were doing.
Yeah.
They had to release a statement alongside the film talking about all the good that these tests did and how the methods that you see in the film don't reflect how they operate now.
Well, yeah, I was like, oh, it was of its time.
Because Porton Down is still open and operational and still testing on animals.
Oh. Well, I didn't know that, for sure.
It's still a military research facility.
That's not good. I can't see them being punished at all, though, because morally they did things very wrong, but I'm not sure if they like legally did anything wrong.
Well, I mean, we're not going to get that without an independent inquiry.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we're going to get.
No. Especially because it was so long ago now.
But they said in their statement that they do not recognise today any of the practices shown in the 1952 film footage.
Well, good, but also obviously.
Yeah.
You know?
It's extremely controversial footage. It's very upsetting, and you can totally see why they kept it completely secret.
Yeah.
And it would never have seen the light of day if it wasn't for Mike Kenner.
Good guy.
He is an amateur historian, which is why I say that I am that at best. Because look what he's doing.
Damn. Ooh, so did he just... Was he like a journalist or anything, or did he just want to know the truth? Do you know?
I don't think he was a journalist. I know he was writing about the tests, and he was investigating. I don't think he was a professional journalist.
No, he just...
I could have that wrong, though. From what I could see, he was just looking into it.
Just wanted to know the truth. Mm-hmm. It shows you the power one person can do.
Mm-hmm. And he kept going, even though they kept coming up with reasons why they weren't going to release it.
Yeah. That is mental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2008.
2008. That is not far enough ago.
No. But it wasn't until 2020 that it came to light who the original whistleblower was.
Oh, yeah. The one in 85. Mm-hmm. Who? There's an owl over here.
2020.
Who was it?
Well, the truth came to light in Clive Ponting's obituary that he was the one who released the information.
Oh, that's a baller way to let people know it was you.
Now, Clive Ponting already had a reputation for whistleblowing before he approached the Observer about Operation Cauldron. He was a civil servant, so he worked with government, and he had leaked documents during the Falklands War about the sinking of the Belgrano, which was an Argentinian warship.
Oh.
Margaret Thatcher, I'll leave space for booing here, and other members of her government lied about the circumstances of the sinking that killed 300 sailors, who were mostly young conscripts who had been forced to sign up.
Oh.
They claimed that it was all an accident, and the warship had been torpedoed by a British nuclear submarine in the fog of war. But none of that was true. It had been tracked by the submarine for hours before it was ordered to torpedo the ship. And the government also claimed that the ship was sailing towards the exclusion zone and was therefore a threat to British forces.
Oh.
But that doesn't seem to be true.
Not good.
Not technically related to our story, but Clive Ponting was the one who released that information that they were lying, and the circumstances of that ship sinking with all those men on it wasn't what they claimed.
Jeez, good guy. It's not something I know anything about, the Falklands War.
Just grim.
Yeah. We don't have to go there just now.
So when all of that came out, he leaked all of those documents to prove what they had done. Clive was discovered.
Yeah.
And he was initially offered a deal by the government to admit to everything he had done and just to get the hell out of there. Basically, come clean, say you did this, you leaked this information, and then leave.
Oh, okay.
But then the powers that be changed their mind and then demanded that he be put on trial for what he had done.
Oh.
Which wasn't part of their initial deal with him.
No. Ooh. So, what did he do?
Well, he went on trial. He was put on trial, and it was a huge spectacle. But in the end, Clive's lawyer was able to argue that in the Official Secrets Act, which is a piece of legislation, a person is allowed to release classified information, quote, if it was in the interests of the state to do so, unquote.
Well, I'm glad.
Well, he was able to make the point that, no, this information needed to be released.
Yeah.
It was in the interest of the public, basically, that he did that.
Which is, again, the case for Operation Cauldron.
Well, you can see the way he thinks.
Yep.
In this case, in his trial, the jury deliberated and came to a perverse verdict.
What's that?
It was completely new to me. But it basically means the jury has decided that, yes, this person has broken the law. They did what they've been accused of. But the jury has decided they're not guilty.
Interesting.
So this can happen if a jury thinks the law is unfair or the punishment outweighs the crime.
Yep.
So they can decide, yeah, you did this. What they are saying you did, but we're not finding you guilty because we don't think you should be punished.
Crazy.
So Clive was acquitted.
What would the punishment have been, do you know?
I don't really know.
Can't have been good.
At the very least, jail.
Yeah.
Because it's leaking state secrets. They're dealt with quite seriously. But he was acquitted. Completely.
Then he went back to work and everyone went, do not trust this man.
Well, going through all of that, and then he discovered the file about Operation Cauldron, saw what was in there, knew it hadn't been shared, and went to the press. So he was fully prepared to go through all of that again.
Yep. For the good of the people.
Yeah.
Good guy. Good guy, Clive.
And nothing came out until his obituary was released, when he died in 2020.
Mental. Mental.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
And it's a shame it's so recent that a lot of the information is coming out. But I think it's important to resist the idea that all of that happened a long time ago and it couldn't happen now.
No.
It's not good to think that way. Like earlier, you mentioned the anthrax tests.
Yes.
These were tests that were done on Grignard Island, which is quite close to where we grew up, where they released anthrax.
Yep.
On this island, I think to test the effects on the environment. I don't want to get too into it here because it could be another episode or an extra episode.
Yeah.
So that was another incident of dangerous chemicals being tested in the Highlands.
Yep. And then the claim was, no, it's safe, we didn't do that. And everyone locally went, yes, you did. What are you doing? But yeah, we won't get into that.
And in 2020, so very, very recently, Michael Gove, who is an all-round prick and British politician, he's a Tory scumbag, he suggested that trials should be held throughout the Scottish Islands in lifting the compulsory lockdowns that were put in with COVID, just to see what would happen. Because that would inform how then they would lift lockdowns around the rest of the country. So still, this part of the country is being targeted to test potentially dangerous things for everyone else. Because he wanted to lift restrictions in island communities and just see how COVID-19 would spread.
Oh, why do you want independence? Oh, you know.
And if you live here, you know, but in the Highlands and Islands, there are a lot of ageing communities. There are lots of elderly people living here, especially in small places and on the islands. So what he was proposing was putting them at serious risk, and he did not care.
No. Well, because, the London people would have been safe. Who cares about the Highlanders? Ooh, that boils your blood.
So that's very recent, and the mindset is startlingly similar.
Yep.
And at the end of it all, a fact I've saved for the very end of this frankly short episode for us.
It's quite a short episode.
Because I know it's going to frustrate you, is that...
How rude.
Is that Operation Cauldron was considered a failure
Oh, it didn't even work?
because it didn't have the results they hoped for. And they now knew they wouldn't be able to weaponize these diseases like they wanted to.
Oh, well...
So it was all kind of for nothing.
In a way, I'm relieved, because the less weaponized plague we have, the better. That's my hot take.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah. Oh, it was all for nothing. It's like some sort of weird supervillain story. Mm-hmm. Except it's our own government.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why real life is much more frightening.
100%. But that is the story of Operation Cauldron.
Well, that...
It leaves a bad taste in your mouth, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is another one where I'm like, did I enjoy that? Was that good? It was a good story.
You should have been inside my head when I was researching. Like, I was livid.
Yeah.
It's the lying and the sticking to the lie.
Mm-hmm.
But then knowing that this isn't the only time that this happened because of Anthrax Island.
Yeah.
And I remember Michael Gove coming out and suggesting that in COVID and being furious.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Because
the worst.
your granny was in a care home.
Mm-hmm. In the Highlands. Quite near Greenyard.
Yeah. My granny was in bits because her brother was in a care home in Skye.
Yeah.
Couldn't leave and no one could go. It was awful for her.
Absolutely awful.
And those are the communities that he wanted to target as if they don't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll just test it. We'll just see how it goes.
We'll just see what happens.
We'll just see how this potentially deadly disease, because the death toll was incredibly high in 2020. Mm-hmm. No one had a handle on it. He was quite happy just to see how it would spread, and then that would decide their plans for other places.
It's horrendous. Absolutely horrendous.
So when you hear people getting passionate about independence, I feel like it's because of that mindset.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that incident, but it's that mindset from London.
Uh-huh.
I don't even want to say England, because that's not true. London and British government.
Yep.
Tory government.
Tory government. Well, in and around Ullapool was quite, and the Summer Isles was quite a common place for war games.
Yep.
To be practiced, because I remember being young and one of the fishermen took up a torpedo, and there was just a torpedo on the pier for a while, because now and again they were just left behind, and they'd phone up the government like, yeah, we found a deactivated sea mine. Do you know anything about this? Like, nope, we don't know anything about that. Nothing at all.
But sometimes
What's that doing there?
you'd be in Ullapool and you would see like fighter jet or one of the big army planes
Yeah.
coming straight down the valley, like barely clearing houses.
Well, there's photos of them, you see them like below the hills, where people are on the hills looking down and taking photographs.
And they're not allowed to do that.
These warplanes flying past.
They're not allowed to do that when
Yeah.
people live so near. And they do it all the time.
And in the last 10 years, the filling up the sea with all the deactivated mines happened, I think, in the 80s.
Yeah, but I've seen planes
The
coming
planes
through.
are still doing that. It's not good. It's not good at all.
We're lovely people. Stop it.
Stop it. Take your shite somewhere else.
Yes, we're really nice.
Yeah.
We're very interesting. The scenery is lovely. Stop trying to poison us. Please. No poisoning. No explosives.
Yeah.
No bombs. No bullshit.
No bullshit. That's what we want.
Ooh, I wonder if we could put that on a t-shirt. No buboes. No bacteria. No bombs. No bullshit. Done.
It's the renaissance of the hippie generation.
Yeah. What are your final thoughts?
Just of horror and sadness.
I'm glad I could do that for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that on a Tuesday afternoon. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing about that story. I did. I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about that.
I feel like more people should.
Yes.
I know it's awful, and I felt awful researching it, but I feel like more people need to know that that's something that happened.
I think so. That's something that went on and is kind of still ongoing. Not that specifically, but that attitude persists.
Well, there's never been an inquiry. There's
No.
never been an apology, as far as I can see.
Never been just a nice donation to the Isle of Lewis charities. That'd be
Nothing.
nice, wouldn't it? Oh, Well, I think that's about it from me. I'm gonna go. We can go be sad on Patreon now. Further ranting.
I'm not going to go be sad on Patreon. I'm going to be fucking furious.
Yeah. To carry on this rant, we shall be over there for the weekly blether.
Yes, the weekly blether gets released on the Monday after each episode.
Yeah.
Where we talk about the episode and we answer your questions.
Yes.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. There we go. That's what I hope for this episode.
Yeah, it's okay if you didn't enjoy this one.
Yeah.
I understand.
Or if you did enjoy it, that's also okay.
But see, the sick part of my brain, I was like, I'm not enjoying researching this. But I want to tell this story so bad.
Well,
you know?
You watched that film, so hats off to you.
Don't remind me. Do not. I'm never getting that out of my brain.
Nope. That's going to be scarred in there for life.
Yep.
Well, we shall go. Thank you for being here. Leave a review, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.